traders, I am back. Sam Shakespeare coming to you live. Hope everyone's doing well. It is Wednesday, hump day. It's usually a pretty good trading day overall. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays are the best. Mondays are slow, Fridays are erratic, but Fridays can be fun. But you don't want to gamble. That's for sure. Okay, so yesterday we briefly got over, we did some look at the grids. We looked at some of the features of the grids, the compact view and the price and center. Those are all new features. You can change the colors of the grids, things like that. What else did we do? We showed you the newsreader, the basics of the newsreader. And today we're just going to get into a little bit of the VTA. The VTA is a very, how do I want to say? It's an in-depth piece of software. I mean, we can't really get through it all in a day. There's 20-something setups built in, and that's, it takes a lot to get through. So I figured we kind of see what was developing in the market, and we could kind of go from there and say, hey, if we see trend trades, we could work on the trend aspect. But first, what I want to do, I don't really see a lot going on in the market. I can see it's, there's a little bit of movement maybe starting to happen, but if you look across the time frames, across all the currency pairs, pretty much everything, maybe euro dollar looks like it wants to start moving a little lower. Let's get onto some 5-minute charts here. Let's get a better view. The 1 minute's okay for some stuff when you're looking at entries and stuff, but when you want to get a view of the market, you at least got to be on a 5 minimum. And if you want to get a good sense of trend direction, you need to be out more, hour or so. Okay, so we got 5 minutes. You can see most of these are sideways. Dollar Canada all the way over looks like we just made a higher high on the 5 minute. That's something that could move higher. It does look like it's, the white zone has to, if you see the white zones are collapsing, so those need to turn around a little bit, but overall that's starting to look like it could move a little bit higher. I'm not going to put a trade on this euro now. Let's go out, let's look at the hour for a second, see what's really going on. I can see the hours in sort of a downtrend just by glancing at the grids, but let's look. There we go. See, so I would say this euro looks like the biggest potential for something. The problem here is right now is if you're going to enter a trend type trade, you got to wait for the price line to get back into your box area, and then to go short, you kind of want clear rows of 20 pips. And right now, these boxes would have to kind of get below 76, and then even then you got a 68. So really, you probably wouldn't really start shorting this too much until you got a pattern that formed under 68. If you're going to do short with this pattern, you'd want this thing to float up to like big figure before taking a trade through a pattern. So, we might just end up just watching this for now. I don't see anything really, calling out my name for a trade. I mean, now the cable, the one thing about the cable is these moved yesterday pretty good, and these have clear roads for the most part down. This cable, both these cable and pound yen. But you can see it's just not a gorgeous setup right now. This is pretty much a full-on range. Oh, and look at that big gap there. So that's probably got to get filled up. You guys got to leave that alone for now. Okay. So it's probably a good day. I mean, we might see euro float a little lower. There's not a lot to do now. Now, I'll tell you what, if euro does get down to this 68, 69 level, I mean, it's not a great snapback. You'd like to have 20 pips or more from your entry, which would be here, back up to the 1 minute box. So 68 to 88 would be nice. That's 82. So that's 14 pips. Not bad, though. I'd say it might be worth giving it a shot. We'll look at the price when it gets there, and we'll see. Excuse me. Okay, I just had to make some coffee. Got my coffee. Got some situations worked out. All right, let's get into the VTA. What I want to do first. Oh, hang on. Got a message from tech support. Omar, good morning. Welcome. Okay. I think it's important that we all I just repeat that I think it's really important that we stay interactive in the chat. And I know it's real tempting just to sit there and listen and kind of just watch and listen, and that's fine. Everybody learns in their own way and they absorb information in their own way. But I can tell you, if you ask questions, it will help everyone. It will help you for sure. It'll help all those in the room that were thinking about the question but didn't have maybe the nerve to ask the question. And also it helps me because it helps me keep the conversation going. I have basic outline type stuff that I go by, but I don't hit every point every time, and sometimes it just takes a little question to get me going. So it's definitely a good idea to stay interactive. Let's see. Let me go ahead and get to your questions here. Yeah, I'll talk about slow cars for sure. Okay. So Roland asks, is it possible to switch all VTA trades to manual at once? And when you say manual, do you mean like one click? Is that what you're kind of saying? Because okay, all right, yeah, because manual is a type of trade. A manual is just any trade on the grid that you want to take that maybe doesn't have an alert associated with it. Maybe you see a trade that you like that it looks like a good trade. It's at a nice level. There's a big gap between back to the 1 minute box or something. Maybe it doesn't fit the exact criteria for a snapback trade or one of the alerts, but you still like it based on your knowledge of the grids and you want to take a trade and you can buy or sell on the buttons. And that would be a manual trade. Okay, but a manual trade can be one click or dynamic. So I see that what you're really asking is can you make all the VTA trades one click? Excuse me. And what I can do and what I will do is I don't have that switch just to make a global one click. What I'm going to do, there's a few things I've got in the works, rolling, and then we'll get to the slow cars. I'm going to have a button on this button pad, and it's going to have a one click. It's going to be a toggle between one click and dynamic. Okay. And that, of course, will just be for the manuals, but it'll allow you to switch from one click to dynamic without going into the control panel. Because I know going into here every time you want to do something could be a little cumbersome. Here's manual, here's our entry type, which we can do it here. Well, I'm definitely working, and I'll get back to this control panel, on getting a one-click button on this panel, which I'm working on it now. Also, what I've done is in the past I've created, and this is for the version 1, this is version 2, I've done a little different coding, so I've got to recreate these. But I did what was called mods, MODS, modules, short for modules, little mods. And they're kind of like little settings files, but instead of like a normal settings file, when you load right here, when you load a settings file, it changes all the settings. You can't just change a few settings. Well, I've created mods, and I don't think I have them. No, I didn't install them. Let me see if I did install them. Oh, there are some in here actually now from the previous install. Okay, so for example, so these are all mods in these folders. You don't have them in your install right now because this is actually from an install from my older version 1. So for example, here's a mod that says stops. This gives a blanket 10 pip stop or 15 pip stop, 20 pip stop or 25 pip stop on every setup. You just click that and it gives you 25 on every setup, so you don't have to give each one its own setup. So what I will do is I'll make some mods for like one click entry. Like here's a scale out. See, this is a 1050. So this is basically, these are little codes that you can just add this and it'll affect every trade setup, but it won't change any other settings of the trade setup. For this one example is a scale out 1050. This means it will give every trade setup a scale out of once you're in 10 pips of profit, it'll take 50% off. Okay, but these actually don't work. These are for the old version. So I will make new sets of trade mods for this type of stuff. That way you can do one-click stuff and just blanketly change all the settings on stuff. All right, so that'll be coming. Give me a little bit. I really want to get the the little kinks worked out in the trade room first. Let me close this for a second. And then I'll get back to the upgrades. Okay, so I've got a lot of upgrades planned right off the bat. I just got to make sure our room is functioning properly and etc. So, but for now, you just have to change each setting to one-click entry if you want it one-click entry. So in other words, if you get the alert for a snapback trade and you're like, oh, and you forgot to change it, that alert is pretty much, you'll have to cancel the alert, change your setting, and then wait for another alert. Or what you could do is, if you get the alert for, say, a snapback trade and you forgot to trade it, change it to one click, it's still on dynamic, then what you can do is you can set your manual trades to one click. You can cancel the alert and then just take it as a manual trade with your one click entry. That's a couple options right now. So obviously I want this to be a streamlined system, so I don't want you to have to do that every time. I want to make this stuff easy. So that's a great question, and those types of questions will help me make sure that we're keeping this as user friendly as possible. All right, I hope that helps, Roland. Now, Fred, slow cars question mark. Okay, perfect. So just in general, excellent. Okay, so let's back up then. Let's look at the grids like it's a 4-lane highway. I think this is a very relevant metaphor for the grids. Okay, so here's, for example, the euro dollar. Yeah, keep it false for now, Sapa, and I'll talk about that too. So we got a 4-lane highway. All right. And so if you're driving on a highway, actually, like you put yourself in that vehicle and you're driving on a highway, just in general, you know that if you've got a highway that is just full of cars and full of traffic, it's much more difficult to get where you're going. Whereas, if you drive, say, in the middle of the night on a highway and there's not a car on the road, all of a sudden it's a lot easier to travel down those roads. So if you look at this as a crowded highway with cars, then obviously you can travel along roads that are clear. So these red lines are clear roads, and these are roadblocks. So these are cars traveling on the road. So every time you see another number, that's a car on the road. So these are definitely slow cars, but we just call these a roadblock. I call a slow car, for example, I don't see a lot of, let's go to a grid where there's more action. When you get a grid like this, when it doesn't have a lot of action, you get rows like this. So you got a 2-column roadblock, a 4-column roadblock. These are just cars driving next to each other to make it hard to pass them. A slow car would be just a car like on one lane. And I'm trying to find a good example, and I don't even see a great example of a slow car, to be honest with you. So say, for example, this was not a 4-column roadblock, and this one on the 5-minute lane was there, but all these were clear, and clear. Then you basically just have a slow car. So basically, roadblocks are very strong support and resistance. A roadblock, so you have a multiple time frame line of cars. That's a roadblock. Those are very strong. A slow car, you can get by. You can pass a slow car. So if you've got a good setup but you only have a slow car in the way, that's okay. You can take that trade. A couple of slow cars isn't a big deal. When you get them lined up like this and you have a roadblock, that is something to actually consider as a reason to not take a trade, or maybe take an entry off a trade. All right, so that's the basics on slow cars. I mean, they're just support and resistance areas. They're just obstacles. So one of them on the highway is not as big of a deal as a roadblock. All right, and that's the gist. I mean, really, it is. That's the basic gist of what a slow car is. The breakout is a fully automated trade setup. And to be honest, I may have forgot to block it on you guys, so you might have it for free. I don't get your hopes up. I don't know. I was supposed to block it because the automated setups are a little extra. Plus, I want you guys to really learn what the setups are before relying, because even the automated setups do require a little bit of management. In other words, you don't want to put a breakout robot on if you have a rangy market, or you don't want to have a trend bot on if it's a rangy market. So, you know, you still want to make sure you're in the right time to have certain robots going. The breakout is a really nice performing bot. It basically will enter a trade once it breaks out of a range. So, I would say don't enable it yet. But if you're curious and you're on a demo account, you can try it and see if I've accidentally left it accessible for you guys. If I have, and now that I'm actually saying it out loud, maybe I will just include that as a bonus for you guys, a little breakout strategy. It's nothing fancy, but it's actually effective. It's nothing fancy. To be honest, it doesn't even rely too much on the grids. It's just an extra little breakout strategy. It will make some pips for you, okay? But you can try it. If it works, let me know. Actually, I might actually just set it up as a free setup, but I just but I'm not going to go over it just yet right now. So we'll save that for a few sessions. Roland wants to make sure that if we use one click, we can still have access to the dynamic stops and targets, and you do. You do. I think there's only one dynamic stop that you're not eligible for when using the one-click entry, and that's called the swing stop. That's the only one. Excuse me. Let me go ahead and bring up the control panel. Okay. I went ahead and put a dummy password in here because I know yesterday I was trying to do something like hide my password, and it was just making it a little challenging. So I put a dummy password in here, and that should be fine, so we can go through this without worrying too much. So the short answer on that, Roland, is yes, and I'll get to that because I'll start talking about that one-click entry here during this session. Hey Omar. Omar wants to know how you can tell when the price is retracing on the grid, and it's a good question too. That's going to be basically a glance at the chart type situation. But I will. Yeah, that's a good question. You'll see it on the chart for the most part, but I will. I can't say that specific question is in my repertoire of conversation, so I can't say we'll get to that. Maybe we should just talk about that real quick then. Okay. So, for example, let's look at. I'll pull the dollar Canada over so we can just kind of stay where we're at. So if you just look at this chart, for example, it's not a fantastic grid. Actually, let me just pull the grid over. I hope I don't mess you guys up. I just figured I'd just keep it on this side. Okay, so here's a grid that if you look at the body of the snake, I always look at this as a snake, okay, which we'll talk about when we get into the trend trade discussion. In a trend trade, for example, the head of the snake would be up. The 1 minute boxes are the head of the snake. So here's your head of the snake. So if this was exactly the way I was talking about a trend trade, this would be up here. The head of the snake would be leading the charge up, and the snake would be moving in the upward direction. In this case, it looks like it was moving up. And you know how a snake moves, the head moves first and then the body follows. So it looks like the body that was moving up, but now he's turned his head and he's just starting to turn back. This is actually a reversal setup. Not tradable though, but that's kind of what it looks like. So if this is a trend, it would be looking, the head would be up here. So, and the price would be moving up. So, and that was here when the price timeline was here and the price was up here. We probably saw that beautiful looking trend. So here's your retracement right here. We've made a high. Now these candles are the retracement, pulling back to the first retracement line. Here's the 5 minute box. It's moved all the way to the 5 minute L6. There's the L7. All right, so this is basically a retracement. So if you were on the 5 minute, you may have been looking for a 5 minute entry here. And if you had chosen a dynamic entry, it wouldn't have even got you in yet. You're still safe. It would not have entered you. If you had entered a one-click entry, you'd be a little negative right now. Not too far, though. Only 6 pips or something, not even. So this is a retracement. So when you look at your pattern and you have your head of the snake and you got your staircase pattern with the boxes, you got your 1-minute boxes here somewhere. They're not right now. I'm just kind of imagining. Then you got your actual 5-minute boxes, your 15-minute boxes, your 60-minute boxes. If your pattern's in place, it means that it did probably just make a higher high and it has pulled back to one of these boxes. So if you're at a box, say here in this case a 15-minute box, and your pattern's intact, if the pattern's intact and you're at a box, that means you've got an entry. You're in a trend trade with a pullback. The grid will tell you that all by itself, but it's a good idea to look at the chart and make sure you're looking at what you're looking at. So for example, in this case, you've got a 15-minute trend. If we look at a 15-minute chart, it'll look like a 15-minute fresh high and a pullback. See, there it is. We're kind of a consolidating range, fresh high and a pullback, and we're here. Technically, I could see someone maybe trying a long on this dollar Canada. I mean, it's made higher highs and it's pulled back. I could see it working. I've got no qualms with it, except that I'm not really watching dollar Canada right now. I probably am not going to take this trade at the moment, but I could see someone attempting it. It's not breaking any crazy boundaries with the price action. It's kind of just at a slow little. And we just see here it was ranging, and it did kind of break above, and now it's pulled back, kind of back into the range. So it has a strange look to it, but it is holding above its 15-minute support. A nice clear road there, clear road on the hour. You could at least probably take it to this level without too much of a hassle. Is it a salivator, quote unquote? Is it one of those things you salivate over? No, it's not. But it's valid. I would say it's valid. Okay. Okay. So it's going to be basically down to your knowledge and understanding of the grids and what they're showing you, and that just comes with a little bit of time, but not too much time. You log in every day. Okay, let's now get into the control panel real quick of the VTA, and this is just to get you guys up and running. Now the cool thing about the control panel, there's a lot of stuff on it. That's not maybe not. I mean, there is there's a few settings, okay? And one of the things about the VTA has been there's always been so many settings that people have looked at it and just their eyes have just glassed over. And so sorry about that, and that's been the ongoing thing, is to get this. But how do you pack a bunch of features and just have one button for people? You can't. You can't just have one button that covers all these features. So, and I admit some of the features a lot of people will never need or never use, and that's fine. But they're there for those that really want to dive in and see what they can do with this thing. So in previous versions, some of you may have remembered, you may have seen old videos, that all of these descriptions enable 1-minute trend trade. They were not. They were variable names, so they were kind of hard to read. And so that was one issue. So I was able to get plain English descriptions of all the settings. So that has been a help, but that doesn't change. There's a lot of them. I have removed some of them. But let's just quickly go over here. The first section is just the global kind of basic settings. Do you want it to give you alerts on Friday? Set it to true if you do. I have it set to false as a default, but you can set this to true very easy, and now it just works normally on Fridays. Okay. I have this set time to 0 to 24, which means it always works. Each trade setup has its own time frame. So, for example, a trend trade you may not want to fire off at GMT 23, 24, 0, or 1. You may not want to fire those. But between 6 and 15 GMT, that's good for trend trade. So you might want to set your trend trade to between 6 and 15. Okay, but most of the trades have their own time setup. So this is just an overall one, okay? The next one's maximum number of simultaneous trades. I have it set to 10, but you probably don't need 10 trades. There is another feature called the trade recovery. So that needs a little more trades availability going on. I don't have that active for you guys, and you don't need it right now. No, that's for later if you want. It's more of a fun thing. Maximum spread, I've got it set to 4 pips. You can set it wherever you want. You do have to, on this for now, add the 0. So if it's 4 pips, you have to add the 0. Because remember, you're getting quotes. There's a decimal. There's another digit after the pip. It's like tenths of pips. So you have to put that digit in there for now. Alert timeout. This is just a number of minutes. Say you get an alert and you reject the alert. You get a snapback, but you don't want it. It doesn't look great. So you say no. This basically just makes sure that you don't get another one right away and just keep getting bombarded with alerts. You can set this to whatever you want. I put 3 minutes. So 3 minutes have to go by before it will give you another alert for that same trade setup. Okay, so you can set that to what you want. If you may think 3 minutes is too long, or you may think it's too short. All right, this is your lots is your default lot size. I just want to say this: if you are not using the power of 20, okay, so put a lot. So if you ever disable it, it'll go to this lot size. Also, if for whatever reason your account doesn't have enough money to properly scale then it'll give you this lot size also. So basic stuff right there, very basic stuff. Okay, so let's just go on through that. Now this is your power of 20 pips a day money management setting. I think this is one of the keys to the system, because I always stress you're just trying to get 20 pips a day. That's it. Pips, points, whatever you want to call it. Pips are pips. They'll always be 20 pips. So if you can just get good at making 20 pips, the VTA will quietly up your lot sizes behind you as long as you're successful. So basically, and I think this is huge. I mean, this is because when you start thinking about dollars, you start getting a little nervous. You know, it doesn't, it's hard to hang on to a trade if you're up a little bit and hold it all the way to its target. It's like, oh man, I'm up $500. That's a lot. Well, you know, if you're only up 5 pips at $500, then, you know, but your strategy and what you've learned is to make 20 or close to it, or see the trade out at least. Then you have to be able to do that. If you allow the psychology of $500 getting in the way and you cut that trade early, well, now you're not even accurately trading your trading style anymore, and you've just moved yourself into randomness. So the key is to get good at making a certain amount of pips every day, or at least consistently. So at the end of every week, you're up a certain amount of pips. All right, so to do that, you have to get the dollars or pound sterling or whatever your currency is, you have to get them out of your head and just play for points. So also on your trade log, when you're taking trades, I changed the profit section to just reflect points. I just want to see points on the trade log as well. All right, because once you get good at making points, you can up the lot sizes behind that at any time. All right, so that's the philosophy. So what we'll do here, hang on one second, guys, real quick. Okay, so power 20 pips a day. Here we go. So we're going to keep that on true. Okay, if you want to disable it, obviously, you just say false, but I think that would be not wise. Okay, now the risk percentage here, this is how you set it up. You want 20 pips to equal, look, this is the advanced, this is, once you're ready to go, you set 20 pips equal to 2%. Okay, and people might think 2%, that's not a lot. It is a lot. I'm going to tell you right now, you can do some damage to your account at this setting. So 20 pips equals 2 is very heavily weighted. I'm not going to lie to you guys. If you make 20 pips, that's 2% of your account. If you lose 20 pips, you lose 2% of your account. Okay, so, and then this is your growth and drawdown shutoff. So if you hit your 2% target, or on the downside lose 2%, then the VTA will shut down on giving you alerts. You can still watch the grids, but it won't let you take trades. Okay, you can always reset that. I don't recommend it, but just resetting by hitting the money management level button here, by clicking that, it'll give you a fresh 2% to start again. So when you're on demo and you're just starting and you've taken a couple bummer trades and it busts you know, and you lose, it's okay to reset it when you're practicing at the beginning, because you just want to start taking a bunch of trades. You're not really worried about your money management at first. You want to learn the setups. You want to learn how to trade the setups. All right. Once you start learning the setups and you got them, then you want to start practicing getting your 20 pips a day. But it's still at first, even especially when you go live or whatever, you can make 20 pips just equal 1%. Right. And then you cut your risk in half. You know, you can actually, then you got to make or lose 40 pips to get your 2%. Okay. So if you have any questions about this, let me know. You can actually set it. You can do whatever you want. Say you want, if you didn't want 20 pips to equal 2%, maybe you want 30 pips to equal 2%, right? Or maybe you want 15 pips to equal 2%, or 15 pips if you want to be crazy at 3%. Whoa, man, that's nuts. Or 15 pips. So you can do it. It's just a math equation. All right. So any way you want to do it. So 15 pips equaling 1% is the same as 30 pips, right, at 2%. There's no difference there. So however you want to do it. All right. But I think 20 pips and at 2%. But let's just go at 20 and 2% is fine. Okay. That's good. And then we got our growth targets at 2 and 2%. Now, let me tell you how the growth target and drawdown works. Okay, if you have open trades and you are over your 2% growth target, the VTA will not close a trade just because your balance is at 2%. Okay, it's going to try to see every trade through. So you could technically make 3% before it shuts down on you, because the open trades have not finished yet. You, of course, are more than welcome. If, say, you look at your VTA and you see that it's in a couple trades, you accepted some alerts, and you walked away from it because you could, maybe the market was a little slow and you had to get on to doing stuff, but the VTA was in a trade and you didn't want to cancel it. Maybe it was a little negative at the time. You wanted to make sure it got positive. So, but then maybe you come to the platform and you see that the VTA is up, and you're actually over 2%, but your trades are still open. You're more than welcome to close those trades. And then when the VTA reads that you're up 2%, it will go ahead and credit you for that. All right, give me a quick sec. Okay, guys, you're awesome with the patience today. Like I said, guys, this is the first. I'll just repeat it again. This is the kind of the pre-opening period of the trade room. So, I purposely have low attendance and I'm asking for patience from you guys, just because, as expected, there are a few kinks that I have to work out. Like even right now, I've got a few guys that can't log into the trade room. After we're done, I gotta figure that out. And I've got a trade room support always getting a hold of me here. So I got a lot going on at the moment, and that's the whole point of what we're doing right now, is just kind of working out the kinks. But I do apologize for that, and I do appreciate your patience during this time. Okay. So let me get back on this. So that was the power of 20. Does anybody have any questions about the power of 20 pips a day settings? I mean, it's pretty straightforward, right? All right, these are our master switches. These are how you enable the different setups, okay? So look, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 setups. And there's more coming, honestly. I've got a few working. I do want to get the 60 by 60 in there. And for those of you who knows that is, I've also got some range type trades I want to put in there. So I've got some stuff coming. At least 2 more setups pretty soon. I've got everything enabled for the trade room. I got that set to false. Again, you guys might have gotten lucky. I got to look at the code and see if I blocked that out or not. You're more than welcome to check it out. Well, let me just keep on moving. Okay, so let's do the manual trade settings. Okay, so here we go. If you look, starting here, this is at the VTA, we have manual trade settings. Then if I keep scrolling, you see there's the 1 minute trend trade, and then every setting has a beginning, an area, and then an advanced settings area. All right, so the advanced settings are more like the under the hood type stuff. You may or may not need to use them. but they're there. And so, for example, here's the 5-minute trend, advanced settings. Here's the 15-minute trend, advanced settings. Okay, Supreme Combo, advanced settings. So hopefully you guys just need to use the first, but there's some more stuff down below that you can use if you want to get a little more detailed. Alright, so the manual trade settings, what this does is governs any trade that you've used the buttons to open. You'll see, okay, so these are the buttons here. Okay. Let's go through the settings. So to enable manual trade during news alerts. This means if we're getting a news alert, like we're in 13 minutes, we're going to have, or 18 minutes, we're going to have a 30-minute alert on crude oil, and it's going to stop us from trading US dollar during that time. All right. If I want to just be able to trade news, then set this to false on the manual trade. Set it to true. So if I set this to true, now even if there's a news release, I can still take a manual trade if I want to. All right. I have it on false because sometimes, people don't know. They realize there's going to be news coming. They do something silly because they didn't know. If they know, then they hit it and they say, oh, okay, I know that. I want to trade anyway. They can set it to true. Okay, not a big deal. All right. This comes default as dynamic entry. Okay. This is I think, one of the coolest features of the VTA. The one-click entry or the dynamic entry. And there are just as many people to love each side of the coin on this one. I think that most advanced, experienced traders probably will end up using one-click entry. It's just the sense of control that you have. I think most advanced traders like that. And I think once you get a feel for the market action, you can kind of feel when the market's moving in your direction, and you can kind of just enter that way. Okay, but that being said, dynamic entry, and I see I'm going to need to move this setting away from it. Okay, is cool. I like it because what it is once you, and I'll leave it on dynamic entry, and then what works with this is dynamic candle close, which obviously I should put that right next to the entry type, and I should put the dynamic candle close right next to it. Okay, so what this means is if I enter a trade with dynamic entry, it will not enter right away. It will take this candle, this time frame chart. So if I chose the 1-minute chart, it will wait for a 1-minute candle to close in the direction of your trade. So say the price is coming down. Price is coming down. Here, let me do this. Say price is moving lower. And you're waiting here. You're waiting at this line to buy. And when it does, you're going to hit the buy button. Okay? So say the price gets here. If you were on one-click entry and you hit buy, if you buy here on one-click entry, it just enters the trade. But if it gets here and you're on dynamic entry and then you hit buy, it will not enter. So if the price keeps going straight down, you will not be in the trade and you will not jump in front of a train, as they say. What it will do is it will let the price come down, and it'll wait, in this case, for a 1-minute candle to close bullish. So it'll wait for a bull candle to form on the 1-minute, and then you will be entered into the trade once the very next candle breaks above the high of that candle. I could change this to a 5-minute candle. Say it's a bigger type trend trade, or it's a bigger idea that I'm looking at. Say I'm looking at an hour level, and it's at an hour, on the chart, I think this is a good level for an hour move. Then I might want a bigger time frame. I may want a whole hour candle. I don't know if I want a whole hour candle, but I might want like a 15-minute candle or a 5-minute candle or something like that, so I can make sure that there's at least a little more time than 1 minute where price is holding at that level. This is a really good option. You sometimes will not get as good of an entry of a one-click, but sometimes you'll get a better entry than a one-click, because say maybe price went past the level a little bit and then formed a candle down here and you get a better entry. That happens a lot. But there is one thing that this will guarantee never happens to you. If you use the dynamic entry, you will make sure that you never step in front of a locomotive. You never catch a falling dagger. Okay? It'll prevent that from ever happening. Because what could happen is you enter and it moves so far that it just cancels the trade idea. That could happen too. The dynamic candle close is a great set of training wheels, I think, and a good protective measure to prevent you from just jumping in front of a, like I say, a steam locomotive and getting run over on the tracks. Okay, so I usually keep the manual entries at one click for me because I know what I want to be involved in. And then I choose my setups based on what I want. Like the snapback trades, I keep on one click. But my trend trades, I often keep on dynamic entry. But usually just 1 minute candle close. For the manual trades, you have a stop and a target. These are your hard stops and hard targets. These are your emergency stops and emergency targets. Okay? So whatever you put in these fields is the absolute maximum that you can lose on a trade. So even if you have dynamic stops and targets, it will still not go past these levels. Those will operate within these levels. So this is a way to ensure that you never lose more than what is in your stop here. So if you're doing a trend trade and using the L7 as a stop loss, if the L7 is more in this case than 25 pips away, then you're never even going to hit your L7. The 25 pips stop will take precedence. So these are your hard stops and targets. These are your absolute boundaries. Okay? So you know that's important to know. The risk factor is simply whatever your power of 20 system decides is a proper setup. So say you set it up as 20 pips equals 1%. All right, you're maybe in the beginning stages. You're just going live, and you want to do your 20 pips, but 2 pips is 2% is too heavy just yet. You're starting at 1%. Then this risk factor, say some trades you may have a high level of confidence on, or say your manual trades, say your VTA type trades, you may want to go a little lighter risk because they're trying to get bigger targets and stuff. But say for your manual trading, you're happy just getting 5 pips at a time, 6 pips at a time. So maybe for your manual trades, you might want to set a little heavier than your normal. You might want to set twice as heavy. All right, because you know that you're only going for 5 or 6 pips, and you want those to count for a lot. I mean, of course, you know that's a double-edged sword. But just so you know, some trades that you are really confident in, you can make those trades a little heavier all by themselves. So this is a way to isolate certain trade setups to give you appropriate risk factor. Okay, you can do 1.5. I mean, you can do any multiplier. It's just a multiplier. You can even go lighter. So if I just want to open a half a position according to my risk on certain trade setups, you can do that. So every setup has a risk factor. And that's another thing I want to say is you guys might say, hey man, this control panel, it is like so huge. But the truth is, a lot of these variables are just repeated for each setup. So once you know the setups, you pretty much know all the variables. Some of them have specific variables just to those setups. But for the most part, yeah, it is. For the most part, you have the same type of variables for each setup. All right. So the candle close we went over, that goes with the entry type. Okay. Dynamic targets, true. Okay. For the most part, when you see a dynamic targets section, and it says true or false, everything that's governed by the dynamic targets is listed under that, and the dynamic starts is usually listed under that. But sometimes you'll just see enabled dynamic stops, and there won't be really anything under it, like the trade protector. That's not a dynamic stop. That's just actual trade. And that's because there are some things that happen under the hood. for the most part, they're listed. So for example, dynamic target is true. This is a dynamic target. It means you want to be minimum profit pips for target. So it's not going to look for a dynamic target until you're up 15 pips. That's what this is saying. So it'll start looking for dynamic targets once it exceeds the profit that you enter here. In this case, it's 15 pips. So notice I have a 25 pip hard target, but after 15 pips, it'll start looking for an exit. Minimum roadblocks for target. So in this case, they work together. This is saying after 15 pips, take me out at any slow car. Just get me out at the next. I'll take anything over 15 pips. If there's a car on the grid, just take me out there. I don't want to fight with anything. Or you could say, I want a 2-column roadblock. Now this will say, for example, if we're up 15 pips and we just hit a slow car, it's not going to take us out. It's got to actually hit a 2-column roadblock to be considered an exit point. Now what's a 2-column roadblock? Say we're short euro dollar and we've up 15 pips. Say it's up 15. Almost, not yet. It will be. Now, is this considered a 2-column roadblock? Actually, in this case, it is. Okay, so any level that's within 2 pips of each other is considered a roadblock. So if this is 4 and 5, 3 and 4, 73 and 74, yeah, that's a 2-column roadblock. Okay, so this one, 66, 68, 69. Okay, so this is not a part of this. This is a 3-column roadblock right here with a slow car. You know, if you're doing it manually, you can just tell yourself. But as far as the VTA, it needs hard, discrete algorithms. So I had to draw the line somewhere. So any level that's 2 pips away is considered in the same level. Okay, so do you understand this, guys? The target's 25, but you can set a dynamic target. I can set the target to 50 and then set at 30 pips, start looking for 2 or 3-column roadblocks. Or if you want to do a high roadblock, maybe set it a little lower, like 10 pips and a 3-column roadblock. You'll have, sometimes it's hard to find a 3-column roadblock. You may not find it for 30, 40 pips up there. So you can get creative with this. I think I just have it at 15 pips and take me out at any slow car. And I'm happy with that type of a trade. Okay. The dynamic stops, I can't really tell you at this moment exactly what the dynamic stop is in the manual trade. I mean, I could probably pull it up, and if you guys are patient, I'll just look it up and I'll let you know. And you can always post questions in the chat at any time, guys. Okay, that's our news alert for the, what was it, crude oil? Yeah. You guys know how to read crude oil, guys? We got some time. We'll talk about that in a minute. But dollar Canada is the way you trade that. That's probably why dollar Canada has been stuck flat now, waiting for the oil news to come out. If you use dynamic entry on manual trades, then the dynamic stop is simply a swing stop, which just means if you enter, it will exit if it breaks against you past the most recent swing high. It's one of those stops I have. It's a dynamic stop. It's a cool stop. It doesn't work with one-click entry. That's the only thing, because if you get one-click entry, you're usually picking it up at a lower high. You're already at the swing high, so you've already breached the previous swing high, in other words. So the VTA can't tell the difference on that. So you have to, if you have dynamic entry, then you enter above the previous low or below the previous high, and that creates a swing stop right there. So that's why it doesn't work with one-click entry. But that's the only dynamic stop on the manual trade. There is this other issue I want to go over, is the trade protector scale out and trailing stops. Now, these I've changed a little bit from the previous version. What I did in the last version is every trade setup had its own trade protector, its own scale out, and its own trailing stop. And while that may seem awesome and the maximum flexibility provided, it was really a headache, because you had so many trailing stops and trade protectors to keep track of. And you may have changed it in one setup, but then it may not have been suitable for another setup, or you just changed it for one, and then you get an alert on one that you hadn't changed it for, and it's really frustrating. I tried to do a global one where you could just set one for everything, but that wasn't flexible enough. Some types of trades, you might have some types of trades that are actually bigger trades. A trend trade, you might want to set a bigger a trail stop and a bigger trade protector than you would on an extended reversal where you're just trying to capture 6-7 pips. So what I've done was I've set up 3 of each. So you have 3 trade protectors, 3 scale outs, and 3 trailing stops. So you can either have them disabled or you can enable them like this. You have trade protector 1, 2, and 3. So say I want to assign trade protector 1, okay, to my manual trade setup. Not a problem, okay? But what you need to do is go and set up your trade protector 1. So if you go down to the bottom, you have your trade protector 1, 2, and 3, your scale out 1, 2, 3, and your trailing stop 1, 2, and 3. And let me get my mouse down here. Oh, what's going on? My mouse battery is dying or something. Okay, so they're pretty much down at the bottom. Here you go. Scale out, trail stop, and trade protector. These are them. The cool thing is, I've got them together. You can use these in tandem. In other words, these things will actually work together. You can create an awesome trade management strategy with these functions. Okay, so let's go to trade protector. Okay, what the trade protector is it's a one-time stop move. So it's not a trailing stop, it's just a one-time stop move when you hit a certain amount of profit. So I've got them all set to the same. So if you move 10 pips, it'll move the stop to +6. That's all it's doing. It's not going to take you out of the trade. It's just going to put your stop at +6 once you're at 10. If it keeps going to 20, 30, fine. Your stop's just still at +6. It's just a one-time move. It's a way to protect a trade. If you get early profits, you don't want it to go back into negative. Some people just move it to break even. You can do that. Just set the 6 to 0. All right, that's break even. You can set it to 1 pip, but you got to add that extra little 0. You can do 1.5 pips. That's 1.5 pips. You can do that. 1.5 pips. That's what that is. After 10 pips, say you want it to go to 6, and there you go. That's trade protector 1. I can set trade protector 2, maybe at 15 pips. Let's set it to protect 10. Right? And you can set up a few of these. Maybe I want a longer one. Maybe if I hit 20 pips, I want to protect 10. Alright, so there, I've got my 3 trade protectors. Now I can just set each setup to have a trade protector 1, 2, or 3, and I've got 3 different setups. Now you can always work with your trail stop and your scale out settings. These are cool because you can say, maybe you got your trade protector at, protect 6 at +10, but at 15 pips, once I hit +15, I want to start trailing. I want to take off half. I want to take off half at 15 pips. That's my scale out 1 setting now. And also at that same 15 pips, I want to trail that other half. So I can also say at 15 pips to trail 4 pips behind. So I can scale out and start trailing at the same time. Or I can scale out there and start trailing higher. Or I could never scale out and only use the trail stops. Okay, so these 3 are your trade management. You can set them up. You have 3 separate settings for each one, and you can assign them to any trade setup. Okay, so let's assign a setup to our manual trade. Let's say, and let's look at the 1 setting for each one. And I could set the manual to have trade protector 2 and scale out 1. It doesn't matter, but if you keep the same number, maybe it helps you remember. So let's just do it like this. If we get 10, we'll protect 6 in the trade protector. If we get up to 15, we'll take half off and we'll start trailing the other half by 4 pips. So let's just plan on doing that. So we set them there. Now we just got to go to our manual trade settings. Oh, that's already set. Trade protector 1, scale out 1, and trail stop 1. All right. So that's it. Our manual trades are set. Any questions then so far just about the manual trade settings and using the buttons? And maybe we'll use them a few times. Oh, and let me show you something else too. Okay. So that's on your manual trade settings. Oh, let me say cancel out of here. So let's hit OK. That saves the settings. Now, say you want to use the protect button or the scale out button, and I actually want to use put a trail button on here too. Now, you remember, say for example, the trade protector, if we get 10 pips in profit, it protects 6. Well, so what's the button do? I mean, it's already going to do that. Well, the button, it just basically it protects you at +6 no matter where you are. It just protects it at +6. So say you put at +20. If you get +20, you want to protect 6. That gives you a little more room to play. Now say you're up 10 or 15 and you want to protect it anyway, then you can do it. Okay? You can't protect it +6 if you're not even +6 on the trade though. Just know that. All right, so this allows you to protect it with whatever your setting is for the manual. So in this case, it'll protect it at the Trade Protector 1 setting. So you can see we're at Trade Protector 1, which means +6. If you get 10 pips up, it protects +6. So it doesn't. If you use the button, it doesn't worry about how many pips you need to be up part of the equation. And same with scale out. So if you have a scale out and says you've got to be up 10 pips or 15 pips before you start scaling out, this lets you scale out anywhere at the rate that you want to scale out at. Does that make sense? So if you've got it set at 50%, you can scale out at 50% at any time with the button. You don't have to be up a certain number of pips. And that's what the button allows you to do. Okay, any questions about that? The MM levels, okay, that is if you've hit your daily trade target or hit your daily loss for the day and the VTA shuts down on you. It says daily growth target reached and it stops giving you alerts, or maximum drawdown reach and it stops giving you alerts. The MM levels is like a mulligan. You click it and it resets your levels and it gives you a new 2% to try, or whatever you set it to. So it basically resets the VTA and starts it over. Of course, it doesn't give you any money back that you may have lost, but obviously your balance stays the same. But it basically resets the cutoff levels so you can try for another 2%. Now, if you watch the Experts tab and I hit the money management levels, so it basically reset all these, the target level and the max drawdown level. All right. So if we were to make some points, so this account has 3,200. If it got to 3,264, it'll shut off. That's 2% of 3,200. If it gets down to 3,136, it'll shut off. But if you now hit the levels button, you'll have a new balance because you'll have won or lost. So that new balance will reset. So you have a new target and a new money management level, allowing you to continue to trade. Okay, and then the swipe is simply if you have an alert for a trade, if you take an alert and while you're on dynamic entry and it hasn't maybe entered the trade yet and it's waiting to enter and it says like trend trade ready up here, you can swipe and that will erase the alert so the trade will not enter. Okay, so swipe just clears all the trade alerts or even your accepted alerts that have not entered yet. It's a way to cancel those if you change your mind. Say you accept it and it's waiting for a candle close and you're like, I either made a mistake, I don't want to take that trade, or while waiting for the candle close, maybe the trade has broken down a little bit and you don't like it anymore. Then you can simply hit swipe and it will eliminate that alert and you can continue on and not enter that trade. All right. Okay, traders. I think unless you guys have any more questions, I know we didn't really do anything on the trading aspect. I wasn't really planning on it. Honestly, the market didn't really show anything to trade. But I will go ahead and, unless you guys have any more questions, call it a day. All right, traders, you got it rolling. Have a good one. Fred, take care. Angie, David, Donald, all you guys, Omar, Sapa, have a great day. This is Sam Shakespeare signing out, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.